We'll firstly start off with some introductions. So quick introductions to myself and colleague Sean, who's on the call today, and a very brief introduction to Huntress. We don't want to make it about us too much. We'll then jump into the threat landscape and why that reliance on prevention that we've typically had is not enough, particularly within today's threat landscape. And Sean will then go through some of the actual attacks and threats that we've seen in the wild, so within Australia and New Zealand, and that will emphasize some of the points that I'll make in that threat landscape piece about prevention being not enough. So hopefully you guys get a sense of what we're up against on a day-to-day basis, and the value of partnering with someone like Sterling IT can provide. So I'll start off with an introduction to myself. So Reece Appleton, the regional director for Huntress, so look after Australia and New Zealand. The last 12, 13 years I've been in IT and primarily working with managed service providers, so partners like Sterling IT in that time. Originally from the UK, as you can tell by the strange accent, but personally I'm engaged. I actually get married in November, so it's the pre-wedding stress, which is a lot of fun at the moment. I've got a puppy, a little fur baby who's a nightmare, but he's also the love of my life, which is quite a dichotomy, and just running football and terrible golf today. Go on.
So yeah, I'm Sean. I'm a solution engineer here at Huntress. I've been around the traps. I've been working with MSPs like Sterling for over 10 years. Before that, I was working with small to medium businesses. I've worked for some of the biggest companies in the world in Toyota, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Tabcorp. So I've definitely seen a lot out there. I also have a little dog. He's not the bane of my existence. I just love him. It's pretty great. I'm a cyclist or a rock climber. And Reece, that running is because he just completed his first marathon. So well done to Reece on that. But yeah, so we'll have some fun today. I'm going to take you through some of the hacks that we see out there in the wild. And hopefully I don't scare you too much. The reason we're here is to show you that there is people out there helping you, making sure you are protected.
I like scaring people, Sean, because it shows people that it's what's happening out there in the wild right as we speak. So.
It's a nice reality check, right? It's a nice reality check.
Perfect. Well, I wish you could see the sparkle in Sean's eyes. He's going through some of those scary events with you guys. But look, in terms of Huntress, in a nutshell, Huntress is how SMBs stay protected. So, our mission statement, if you will, is to protect the 99%. Most security vendors and technologies in our space today, unfortunately, really focus on enterprise. And so it becomes increasingly difficult for partners like Sterling IT to protect their customers and for SMBs to protect themselves with enterprise type solutions. And so, this is kind of where Huntress was born. And, our core platform is a managed EDR, which is an endpoint detection and response platform. And the secret sauce is really our threat operations team. So, we have threat ops centers in Australia, the UK, the US, which provide a follow the sun 24/7 support and threat hunting capabilities for our partners like Sterling IT to ensure that Mark and Sterling's customers you guys are protected 24/7.
Yep. So even if there's a 2 a.m. attack when we're all sleeping, the machines are being monitored by people.
That's correct, and it is fairly often that we'll isolate a machine in the middle of the night in Oz time, wake up in the morning and speak to our partners about the incident, and we can go through some of those with Sean. I think what is pretty key, and not talking about Huntress too much, but I do want to highlight the pedigree of security expertise that our organization has, which I think is critically important when, for Sterling partnering with someone like us, but also for the end customers to be protected by these solutions. So these are our three founders, Kyle Hansloven in the middle there. We have Chris, who's our CTO, on the right, and JDF, who is one of our core threat ops team members. And these guys are ex-NSA cyber warfare operators, and so it was their role at times to create access or breaches, if you will, within adversary networks. And I'll let your mind go wherever that decides to take you. Kyle himself was an NSA top performer and a DEF CON capture the flag winner, which is an incredibly difficult feat within the security landscape. And so this level of capability not only sits with our founders, but also runs through our teams, even locally within Australia. So these are the people that are protecting you on a 24/7 basis. So that's enough about Huntress. Moving on, Mark, if you can, to why prevention is not enough. And I think it's important to start with some key statistics that we see, and this is a mixture of kind of global but also Australian focused statistics, which I think highlights some of the things, or emphasize some of the things that we'll run through shortly. So almost half, and this is globally, almost half of all cyber attacks are focused on SMBs. There's a couple of reasons for that. So one is, if you think about the SMB versus the enterprise, small to medium businesses typically have a smaller investment in and smaller capability in cybersecurity. And so from a breach perspective, it becomes easier. The second point, I think, which is becoming even more obvious, is that threat actors now can deploy these attacks at scale. And so for a threat actor, it's a lot easier for me to target 100 SMBs than it is to target one or two big enterprises like an Optus. Sorry, perhaps not Optus, but you get the idea. So that's really critical to understand, is that threat actors don't care if you're 50 employees or 5,000. What's also interesting is that if you look at the average cost of a cyber attack within Australia, the most expensive segment is that 20 to 200 employee organization size at $88,000. And this doesn't take into consideration, brand or reputational damage and things like that. And so for those medium-sized or small to medium-sized businesses, less than 200 employees, the impact is actually greater on average than it is for some of the enterprise organizations that we see on the news. Because let's face it, a 50-man or a 50-person accounting practice or legal firm, when they get breached, it doesn't make it into the news. But we see that on a regular basis. What's also interesting, I think, is if you look at the number of attacks that we see just within Australia itself. Last year, was reported by the ACSC, who is the sort of governing body from a cybersecurity perspective within Australia. They report, or 76,000 cyber attacks were reported. Now, there was some research that came out of the University of New South Wales. I forget who the professor was called, apologies. But that research estimated that only a fifth of cyber attacks were reported within Australia. So if you do the maths on that, within a 12-month period, that's 350,000 cyber attacks last year. And this is not attempts, this is actual breaches and attacks on businesses within and individuals within Australia.
Can I make a comment too? We often get the comment from clients, or some clients, where they turn around and say, why would a hacker want to attack my business? I'm only a small business. I don't have a lot of money, things like that. It's not people attacking a lot of the times. It's bots or robots, where programs look for vulnerabilities and then they'll attack there. Or passwords have been leaked on the dark web. They've logged into mail systems and then been able to access computer systems because of the same passwords, etc. So sometimes people have a false perception that I'm a big company, I'm going to be attacked. Small companies won't. Everybody is open to attack. That's the thing that a lot of people are, not aware of.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And unfortunately, and as Sean will go through, we see this, on a daily basis. What's also interesting, I think, Mark, to your point, is if we look at dwell time. So dwell time is the amount of time that an attacker is within your environment before they either get kicked out or before they launch their attack. What's interesting is that an attacker will be within a 1 to 100 employee size company for 52 days on average, versus a 5,000 plus employee organization, which is, in Australia, possibly cast as enterprise. They're only in that environment for 19 days. And so SMBs are being attacked because of that lack of security expertise and security posture that we see within the enterprise. And people are typically within your environment before launching their attack because, one, they want to find out where the crown jewels are. They're looking at user activity and trying to understand who best they can social engineer. And believe it or not, there are things called initial access brokers who gain access to your system or your environments and then sell that access to someone else. So these are the things, I think, which really highlights the importance from an SMB perspective of really putting a focus and importance on cybersecurity. And again, lastly, to highlight that piece around prevention not being enough, there's a framework called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And it is essentially an outline of various tactics and techniques that threat actors and adversaries will use to gain access and essentially launch their attack and cause damage within your environment. I think, Sean, keep me honest here, there's 14 tactics, I believe.
Yeah, and there's 42 techniques under defense evasion.
Yeah, thank you. So the most the tactic with the most techniques that that attackers use is defense evasion. So regardless of how we protect ourselves, attackers will find their way to get around that. And one interesting thing, which is not part of the slide, but I think is important to appreciate, is that if we saw the MGM grand attack in the news, the casino shut down, which of course makes it into the news, there was very little from a technology perspective that the attacker used to get into that environment. It was social engineering. They essentially got login details from the IT support desk and logged into their environment. Now, we're seeing that type of social engineering, not just, again, at the enterprise, but also within the SMB space. And so, we're working with partners to help educate end users around that as well. Cool. So, and this ties into the sort of journey that we're on and where we're coming from. So this screen here, or this image, is based on a cybersecurity framework called NIST. It's not particularly important in and outs of NIST for today's conversation, but the 5 core functions of NIST, which is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, is a very nice and simple way for us to conceptually understand and to think about cybersecurity. So what you'll see is, historically we have really focused on protect and recover. So we've invested in preventative technology to help keep attackers out. And we've said, hey, look, if they get past, we can recover. And so, sorry, Mark, you had something to add there?
No, that's all good. Yep, I was gonna, yep.
No worries. And so there's this concept of left of boom and right of boom, which is a military term, as a lot of things in cyber tend to be. And left of boom is, hey, before there's a breach. Right of boom is, hey, there's been a breach. And that capability of right of boom has always just been recover. Hey, we can restore, we can recover. The issue becomes, well, there's a couple of issues that you need to consider there. One is that by the time we recover, the damage in today's climate has already been done. Information has been stolen. Invoices have been paid into the wrong accounts. Brand reputational damage has been done. And so, yes, we can recover our data or restore data, but that damage has already occurred. Which makes it critically important to be able to detect and respond to that breach as soon as we possibly can. The other piece to realize is that attackers and adversaries actually have various techniques, which is called inhibit system recovery, to prevent you from restoring effectively. So there's a couple of things there to think about. But essentially what we've seen is this big gap in detect and respond, which is typically where security expertise are required. And again, this goes back to the introduction around where Huntress fits in our mission statement. Most SMBs can't afford to have those security expertise in place 24/7. And so that's why they're partnering with the likes of Sterling IT and Huntress to deliver that capability.
It's near impossible to try and monitor devices for this type of stuff manually. You just can't do it.
Next slide, please, Mark. And what's I find is really interesting if we use this framework is it's you can apply this to a home, home or office security analogy, and it's a very nice way to put things into perspective. I think, if we were to say to everyone on this webinar today, hey, there's been an increase in burglaries in your area, and the burglars, I always struggle with that word, burglars are becoming increasingly smart at getting past your locks that you put on your door. So all we're going to do is put some more protection in. We're going to put some more locks on the door and more locks on the window for you. What would be your response to that, do you think? When we ask this question in person, it's typically, well, what about the windows, or what about the chimneys which they can come down, or even more so, it's, hey, well, what about it? What happens if they do get in? And so, conceptually, as everyone has an understanding and a framework to think about home and office security, because it's been done for a lot longer than cybersecurity, but we understand the need in that scenario to be able to detect, respond to people that get into our homes or people that get into our offices, which is why we have security cameras, motion sensors, and all the rest of it. So, yeah, very important to kind of think about that analogy when you're thinking about cyber security there. And just lastly, before I hand it over to Sean, who has got the exciting stuff to share with you all, I can feel the sparkle in his eyes because I can't see him already. He loves going through this stuff with you guys. Huntress, works with Sterling IT to be able to provide you with a lot broader protection from a cybersecurity perspective, and provides you with expertise, particularly within that detect and respond, in those detect and respond pillars. As we know, prevention, it is, and Sean will go through some scenarios now, just putting technology and hoping for the best is not good enough in today's climate. There's certain controls and stuff that we can put in place as well to minimize that risk, but it's not a case of if, unfortunately, it's when. And so when there is a breach or when someone does get into your environment, it's really important that you partner with Sterling IT and a Huntress to be able to detect and respond to that in a way in which we can minimize as much as possible the impact of those breaches. So on that note, on to the exciting thing. So I'll, if you can jump to that next slide, please, Mark. I'll hand it over to Sean, and he can run through some of the real-world examples and threats that we see, unfortunately, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thanks, Reese. Just to bring up that MGM Grand as well, just skip to the next slide for me, Mark. The MGM Grand, essentially what happened there is it's referred to as vishing, right? So think phishing, but with a V instead. They called the help desk, they got a login, but they found the details of the person they wanted to impersonate through LinkedIn, right? The less information that you put out there, the less risk you're at. And I'll talk about at the end some of the things just walking around the streets that somebody who works in this industry actually notices, just so you start thinking, because there's so many different ways that I could get your credentials, and I hope not to scare you too much. I still want you to trust people, but I'll talk a bit about what I'm kind of seeing just in the world now and how I would actually exploit it.
It's funny you say that, Reese, because the customers that do take up our training sessions for security is one of those things is we say limit the information that you put on social media.
Yeah,
and
you got
exactly it. Like you said, they got the details through LinkedIn and a simple password reset.
Yeah, and that's been a $2 billion USD reputation loss for MGM Grand, and the attack went for nearly a week, and they were losing $8 million USD in revenue every day. So scary, but it was a very simple attack. So
and was it a week before two Caesars got done, but they
Caesars
paid the
Correct.
15 million ransom.
Yeah. So if you guys if people on this, just word of advice, check the casinos owned by MGM. If you are traveling to Vegas, don't stay there. It's like Aria, Paris, MGM Grand, something else, and Caesars as well, their loyalty program. So maybe go to the Venetian or the W, one of those if you can't go to Vegas. All right, so this is some threat ops investigation. So you don't need to know what a RAT is. A RAT is basically a remote access Trojan. So it gives me the ability to log into your machine from anywhere. What this was an end user actually clicked on a file, which loaded a little script that was downloading another file that was going to go through and turn off the AV and put in exclusions. So it was going to do that defense evasion that we're talking about. All right. So it was trying to go through and do that. Now the AV actually blocked the downloaded script from putting those exclusions in to say you can bypass this. So it did a pretty good job, right? Protection worked here, but it didn't go to the next level. If you go to the next slide for me. So this is the same attack. Now, what it did on the left-hand side, it blocked what you're seeing went to the arrow down the bottom. It blocked that, which was going to put the exclusions in. However, it didn't block what was above where the arrow is coming from. So this is the initial script that the end user clicked on. Now, as an attacker, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and log into that machine and go, well, my second part of the attack didn't work. All right, let me change what I've got in here. Okay, let's try again. Okay, hasn't got through this time. I would keep trying. I would keep trying. I would keep trying. I would eventually get in. I'd eventually adjust the script enough to do it. All right.
And sure, just on that, and because that first part is what we call persistence, and perhaps could you just talk about what a persistence and what a foothold is, and why it's important that we caught that outside of what the AV did?
Yep.
That's exactly what I was going to do.
Yep. And if we can do it in layman's terms, please, because we've got a lot of non-technical people.
So essentially, persistence, think of it as a hook into your machine, right? So I've got a hook and I've just hooked it on there to say I have a hook in your machine. If I hooked it into your skin, or hooking a fish, right? I've gone fishing, the line's gone out, that was my fishing. The end user clicked on it, which was biting the hook. I've got that there. Now, what's happening now is the fish is swimming away, right? So I'm going to try and change my attack. I'm going to change my reeling speed. Maybe I'm going to put an automator on it. Maybe I'm going to pull on it a bit more. Maybe I'm going to throw a second line in, something like that, right? So persistence is what we want to do. And Reese mentioned earlier the initial access brokers. So these are people that are very, very good at catching that initial fish and having the hook there, and then they hand the rod off. I would hand the rod off to Reese because he goes to the gym more than me and would be stronger, right? So I would go, I've got this initial hook. I'm going to sell this to you for €50, and then Reese would reel in the fish, right?
And so just to sum that up, that persistence mechanism or a foothold is really just a door into your environment. It's an entry point. It's access that the threat actor keeps. And so with that AV blocking that deployment of the changes that Sean mentioned, AV did its job, great, but the attacker would still have had that access, and so they would have kept opening the door and trying different techniques once they're in your environment to launch their attack.
Exactly, right? And that's where Huntress steps in, because people who aren't security experts, they're not threat hunters, would see the initial block and go, right, protection did its job. So Huntress jumps in, we look at it and go, right, let's clear off that initial hook. We unhook the fish swims away and lives the rest of its life happily, hopefully. All right.
Can I interrupt you? We
Please.
had a customer who, a week before Christmas last year, at around 6 o'clock in the morning, we got an alert to say their antivirus blocked something. Yep. The customer starts at 6 a.m., so we thought, oh, well, maybe they've clicked on something or opened something. We then basically found out that I said to the guys, can we scan the network, look at the firewall logs, check everything? We actually found out that the antivirus blocked the initial thing, exactly like you're saying.
Yep.
But what happened was the hackers were actually in the system already.
Correct.
Because the person had clicked on something, gave somebody remote control without them knowing. And what we actually ended up doing was isolating their whole network and finding out the hacker within 2 hours got onto 4 servers as well. Luckily, we were able to pick it up within a couple of hours. Now, as Reese said earlier in the slides, hackers are generally in the systems for days, weeks, months, and sometimes, close to a year. We were very, very lucky that we were just proactively thought, let's just do a scan anyway. None of the antiviruses picked up that there was a hacker in the system. The only way we found out was manually looking at the logs and seeing that files were being run which weren't normal, okay? And that's essentially what this software does automatically. Now, if this happened at 2 a.m., we would have missed it, okay? It was only because it was at 6 a.m. and then the attack started happening at around 9 when we were actually in the office. We then basically had to restore all the servers to their backups. And we were just very, very lucky that we were able to isolate it on 5 machines, the machine that was impacted originally, plus 4 servers. And the outage for that client, they're a manufacturing client, they were down for a whole day. I would hate to know how much money they lost. And the other thing they didn't have was cyber insurance. And we do strongly recommend all clients to have cyber insurance. And we work, actually, our broker that we've been using for 20 plus years has actually become a client of ours, and we often recommend clients to them. And if you need their information, let us know, and I can pass it on at the end of the meeting. But the issue we had was because we weren't running something like Huntress, and it was only that we were proactive and looked at that straight away, whereas under normal circumstances, we wouldn't, because we would have thought the antivirus would have stopped it. Huntress would have picked it up and we would have missed it. So what example you're saying right now has actually happened to us a week or two before Christmas.
Yeah, and it might actually be a similar tool to what we're going to see on the next page. Let's go to the next page. Ooh, if it's the one I'm thinking of. No, this is different. That's fine. But what they'll actually do is, I'm sure people on this call have heard of some other tools for remote access out there, like TeamViewer. There's one out there called ConnectWise Control. There's AnyDesk. There's a whole raft of these. If you ever get asked to install one of these, unless it is someone from Mark's team that you know and you have confirmed it, do not click on it, do not install it, because a lot of those don't require a credit card to set up, and they're very, very simple attacks. All right.
And unfortunately, we had a customer on the weekend fall victim to one of these as well. So it's if you're in doubt, call. That's the best thing to do. If you're in doubt, just call our guys and we'll help you out.
100%. That's why you've got somebody like
7 days a week.
IT. Yeah, and the thing is, like, you'll find, I've talked to plenty of other MSPs. I've worked with hundreds over my time. Not everybody has the ability like these guys to go through the logs and actually find that, which is quite impressive. So you've got a really good MSP here. So here, this is a process execution. So this is one where yeah, Nathan. So this is one where it's people trying to sitting in the system, and what they're trying to do is delete the actual backups. So there's a lot of tools out there in the cyber space that sit there and go, we have a feature called rollback, right? Where you go, I want to roll back 3 days. Windows has it. It's called a virtual copy. So you can roll back 3 days. But as Reese pointed out earlier, and Mark, you were very lucky that those guys did something silly, because they were probably trying to scan through the network to sit there for longer. But they get that initial access, then they sit there for 20 days, 30 days, 40 days, 50 days. During that time, what they're doing is they're baking the persistence into the backups. So when you restore from a backup, they've still got that hook into your machine. All right. So what we love to do is we don't like to give up that access, because I can keep selling it, I can keep using it, and then if the IT company fixes it, they fixed it back to where I've had it. Right. Either that, or they delete the actual backup copies, so you can't go through and fix it. So that's why they sit in your environment. They just don't want to go and launch an attack immediately. They want to actually impair your defenses. So much like back in the day in history, they would get a spy inside a castle and they would start messing with the infrastructure, taking bricks out, digging tunnels, doing things like that to allow them to attack and keep that attack in your system. All right, let's go to the next one. Yep, so this gives you, we give you an actionable incident report. So what we do is we come in here. This is somebody getting ransomware. We give Sterling the steps to solve it very, very quickly, and they can just hit a remediation button and it goes through and fixes it. This is so we can get you back up and working quickly, so that manufacturing client doesn't lose an entire day, right? They lose a couple of hours, you're back up and working, you're moving on with your day. So we're there to give them that extra layer of expertise to help solve it very, very quickly and get you back on your feet. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, so this one is our new tool. So this is MDR for Microsoft 365. So this is actually looking at your Microsoft 365 identity. So you as a user, right? So what we looked for here, this was a partner in New Zealand who has farms. So they have some farms in like Southeast Asia, Africa, because they're doing manufacturing. We saw a dodgy login from Southeast Asia, as well from Africa and as well from Latvia here. Then this is slightly different. With Microsoft 365, they don't sit there and have a lag time. It's a very different style of attack. So with these, they're immediately trying to do something. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get more information on you. So they're trying to find who's the financial controller, who's in charge of payables, who's got access, who's the owner, right? How do they write their emails? So what they're doing there is they're either forwarding the email out to a Gmail account, a Yahoo account, an Outlook account, a Proton.me account, whatever it's going to be, and they're taking particular emails. They might forward the entire mailbox. They might just forward financial things. And we've actually seen here that we saw the attack happening. We logged them out of every single device and we removed the rule for them. So it's a really good way, and this saved this client a whole bunch of money. Now, if we go to the next one.
What's and just as you jump to that next slide, Mark, what's important, I think, on that piece is there was a customer, I think, at the same for the same partner, and it was a social engineering piece. They actually tried to copy the invoices that they saw within the environment. They tried to amend the accounting or the account details on those invoices, and then charge or invoice the end customer for X amount, and they would have lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so just in terms of that awareness piece, is that if you see if there's any vendor or any partner or anyone that says, hey, we've just changed our bank details, or hey, here's this invoice, if you suspect anything that looks different in any shape or form, please call not the number that's on the invoice or the email, but the number that you usually use to call that vendor or partner. Please call them directly and ask them whether this change is correct, because we see so often, and sometimes it becomes incredibly difficult to get that money back. And this is why it's so important to detect and kick people out of your environment, because those are the types of things that they're trying to do to trick you guys into paying or giving data or whatever it is.
Yeah, which is I was actually just about to bring up the same point, that somebody tried this on Huntress, right?
Yep,
they didn't get into Huntress. They went to one of the people we were partnered with, and they said, "Here's $100,000 invoice. Please stop payment on that. We've got new credentials." Our person looking after it followed the internal process, which was to call that person and say, "Hey, what's going on? Why is this changed?" And they went, "It hasn't changed. You paid to the right place." We didn't lose $100,000. They didn't lose $100,000. We didn't break a partnership due to it, right? So super important. Extra steps there, right? Verified by two people is always a good idea. Two-factor auth isn't just or multi-factor auth isn't just a technology thing. If you're paying big invoices, look, I know it's extra process and we don't like friction in our day-to-day jobs, but you run into things. I was speaking to somebody at an event recently, and they got done with a business email compromise scam with their mortgage, paying off their entire mortgage. Heartbreaking to hear, right? So yeah. All right, let's jump to the next one, because I'll talk about that after we go through. Okay, so these two boxes, this is my biggest piece of advice. any tool that has these options available for you, Gmail, 365, any tool that you use, if it's got multi-factor authentication, it has multi-factor authentication for a reason. Facebook, Instagram, all of them. If I had more time today, I could spin up and send you a fake Instagram login page and take your credentials immediately, but unfortunately we don't. So please don't tick these boxes, right?
And we've actually done webinars on, when we do our security webinars, we also talk about security tokens versus MFA. The security tokens being a physical device, so there's no way to circumvent it unless you've got that physical device with you as well.
We'll talk about that after I've shown as well, right? So don't tick these boxes. I know we like to do it, but don't even do it in your personal life. If we go to the next one and just hit play on the video.
And just to caveat that, well, not caveat, but just to emphasize that fact, with Huntress, we get kicked out and have to log back into things within like every 15 minutes, and it is the most frustrating thing in the world, but it's secure, and we do it for a reason.
Yeah, we understand why, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just hit play on this.
Yeah, it's gone to another screen. Just give me 1 sec. I'll just drag it over.
Okay. All right. Okay, so this is me running a tool called Sharp Chromium, which is just downloading the cookies, right? So it's saying there's no cookies currently present for live.com or outlook.com that you would know. So now we're going to sign in. So we put in our username, we put in our password. You'll see over on the right-hand side, it asks us for our two-factor auth in a minute. So brings up these boxes. There's we're going to approve it. So two-factor auth. I'm going to tick this box because, hey, I just want to log straight in. And look, I can tell you when I was younger, I used to tick these boxes. We're going to click yes on this and don't show it again. All right. So yeah, we're going to say yes. We stay signed in. Don't worry, you're not going to see any corporate email. So don't have to worry about that. But here, we're now logged into the mailbox. So this is our normal daily flow. In a second, we're going to reopen our little command prompt and run the tool Sharp Chromium. So you don't have to worry. There's a bunch of different tools. I could write this into an email that I send you that does this. All right. So this is going to go through and it's pulled the cookie and the session token for this login. All right. So there's all the fun little code of everything. We're going to grab all of this code and we're going to copy it. And then I'm going to jump over to my hacking computer. Second.
So just what people, actually, I'll let you finish just to explain.
Yeah. So a cookie is basic. Yeah, we'll explain what a cookie is. So here's my old Squid game, Kali Linux. We go to Outlook, we hit sign in, no credentials, right? It's completely blank at the moment. I then go up to the top where I can edit cookies, which is just a little file on your computer. And we're going to paste all that code we grabbed off the other computer. We hit save. Now we refresh and we hit sign in. No more multi-factor authentication, no more password. Right? Done. So I just hit cancel now. I'll just pause.
Right.
Sweet. Yeah. So yeah, a couple things from that. We don't want to do those. We don't want to tick those boxes because it gives people the ability just hit like the right key and it should skip forward. We don't want to give people the ability to get into those, right? So a cookie is just stored information about that website. So that's actually known as a session token. So everything you log into, you have session tokens. Now, with somebody like Sterling, they can put things in place where they limit the time a session token has been available. Microsoft is doing similar on it, as well as you can turn those options off so you can't select them. The reason we show it to you is not for your daily work. It's for your outside of work things. So like Mark Welker mentioned, Facebook, things like that, like Facebook, your banking, and banking's pretty good in not storing session tokens, but you just want to be careful because that's what people are doing. To go long way back to what Reese was talking about earlier with people, like with the amount of attacks, right? What we do as attackers is we just basically script it. So if you've worked with Sterling for a while, and Mark, have you ever like provided network attached storage like Synologies and
Yep.
QNAPs and stuff like that? Okay. So there was a group out there, and there's a website that you can go to where I can search for all the Synology and QNAP devices and insert those network attached storage devices in the world, right? I can search for those and then go through and write a script that tries the default admin password and username. All right. So yeah, Mark's bringing it up. So Shodan is the absolute website. So just type in RDP for me and then hit enter. But I could do that, and a threat actor group actually did that. And within hours, they had ransomwared a whole bunch of network attached storage around the world and asked for $10,000 from each person. Right.
There's
So it's
people's
not.
login screens.
Yeah. So we could log into these computers right now if we felt like it, right? So it's pretty scary. If you're aware of Linus Tech Tips on YouTube, Session Token is how they got done. They got done.
It took him a while to work that out too.
Correct. Yeah. So he got done by that. MGM got done by vishing. So you can actually see that they're not sophisticated attacks. Now, I did say that I would talk about some of the things that I walk around seeing. How many people have, like, I live in the inner city of Sydney, but how many people have seen all those like electric bikes that you can just scan a QR code on? Right? I could just go and stick a new QR code on that. And I could change the name of the app on the Android store to be one letter different, right? I could use a Cyrillic A instead of a normal A, which looks pretty damn similar, right? So I could do that and just start taking your credit card numbers. You have to be very, very vigilant and careful. The less information, Mark covered it well, less information you got out there, the safer you are. Verify things, right? Pubs, clubs, go and pay, go up to it and pay. And the other one is if you see somebody reach under and swipe your card, cancel your credit card immediately, right? You want to make sure, don't hand your credit card to anybody. I've seen it too many times. But you've just got to be careful, especially with things like QR codes. Verify its security, make sure you're good. But the less information you've got out there, the less likely you are. Have email addresses that are throwaways. I get worried every time I've been in a business and I see people signing up for new tools to use with their job, which is an absolutely valid thing to do. But please just have a burner email address. Don't use your work email address. Your work email address should just be used for correspondence, not for signing up to anything that doesn't have single sign-on and multi-factor authentication. So if you're going to do a trial for something, please just have a burner account. Proton.me is a free email. You can spin one up in a couple of minutes. It's all very secure. And if you are doing things where you're paying vendors constantly, maybe look at something like working with Sterling's fine. Like you can do it normally there, but if it's something you're paying with a credit card and you're worried that you could get business email compromise scammed, look at something like a privacy.com virtual credit card, because you can use those and those can have limits set on them. So if something does happen, you limit the amount that you've got.
I think privacy.com's not available in Australia.
There's similar ones to it in Australia. I just can't think of their name off the top of my head. But yeah, similar, use the virtual credit cards that you can have a lock on it so you can't get hit with that $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And probably my last point here is, if unfortunately you do get hit, number one, Mark's absolutely right about cyber insurance. The fact that you will have something like Huntress will come into account with your premiums because they require teams like us now to do it. Cyber insurance is important, very, very, very important. But the other piece is, don't be embarrassed, right? This isn't it's not some 50-year-old hacker sitting in their parents' basement anymore. They are sophisticated companies with knowledge bases, playbooks. They know what they're doing now. Don't feel embarrassed about it. Report it to Sterling. We've got your back, but also report it to the government, because the government is in the process of trying to recover a lot of that business email compromise money. So be upfront about it. It's important to report it, because that's the only way we get better as a country.
And just to add to that, in terms of, the threat actors being enterprise as opposed to, just 15-year-olds sitting in their basement. I think, Sean, it was fairly recently that one of the big adversary groups had to make redundancies. So they're actual businesses now. They're not just, people sitting in their basement. So that's really important to appreciate.
Yeah,
as well.
they have payroll. They have their version of super. Like, it's you're getting taken down by the small to medium business version of yourselves, right? They're practiced, they have techniques, they know what they're doing now. So yeah, with that, we've got a few minutes for questions, but you can always ask questions to Sterling IT.
Yep, we've got a Q&A panel, or if somebody wants to raise their hand, I can unmute people and they can have a chat. Actually, if you bear with me, I will see if I can unmute everybody. Don't know if I can unmute or just unmute manually. If there's anybody that has any questions, we've got the Q&A. Feel free, please, to put any questions in the Q&A and we'll get those answered for you. Sean and Reese, I really appreciate your time. I hope everybody's found this quite valuable. And, unfortunately, threats are getting worse by the day, and we're having to always look at different ways of protecting ourselves and our clients. And if we look at, 20 years ago, most houses didn't even have an alarm system. Now we've put in alarms. Most houses have now got security cameras that are accessible via mobile phone. We've got back-to-base monitoring. So even from a physical perspective of our homes, we've changed the way that we protect ourselves and protect our property. And networking and businesses is even worse, because think of it like somebody walking up to every house in the street automatically and just checking that the front doors are unlocked at every house. That's essentially what these people are doing to businesses, worldwide. They're checking your front doors, and if they do get in, there's so many protections that we've got in place, such as firewalls and antivirus to protect you, and also disaster recoveries. And that slide with that boom gave a classic example that, sure, we can protect you, but and if the protections get passed, we can recover you. But in the meantime, I think the biggest damage that businesses are seeing today is reputation. You can't put a price on reputation. And with the products that we're working with Huntress, we've actually got this out for all of our managed clients on this call. We have actually got this running as a trial on your systems right as we speak. And unfortunately, we found about 4 systems which had malware and crypto mining on them. So if we've contacted you, you'd know who you are. We've actually found stuff on your network. For other clients that we haven't contacted, it means that your network at the moment is clear. So it is important that even with all of our monitoring that we have in place and all of the applications and the firewall and the security, there's still those risks, because all this happens because of people, unfortunately. So, and we can train people. If your organisation hasn't had security training and would like it, get in contact with me, and we'll certainly get that organised for you. And even clients that have had the security training, like I said, one simple click, because they've received an email from a vendor that they deal with on a daily basis, got hacked. So it was an external party that got hacked, one of their suppliers. And then when they've received the email, because they deal with that person every day, the anti-spam had let it through. The person's clicked, didn't verify that email username and password was required, and that's how they got into that particular system. So again, we can have all the systems in place, but unfortunately, it's a lot of the times it's people today that open up the doors for these systems. So we need something in between the outer doors and the recovery, being the disaster recovery backups, etc., to be monitoring all the time, and especially if they're going to be sitting on the systems for long periods of time as well.
Yeah.
So we don't actually have any questions, so we might wrap it up. But I do appreciate everybody coming, Sean and Reese. I really appreciate your time, guys. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody got something out of it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And if there are any questions that do come up after the fact, Mark, just let us know. We're always happy to answer.
Thanks, guys.
No, appreciate the time, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.